because this is the first time that all 6 of us principal subjects in Blackfish, former Seaworld trainers, are back together again at the same place at the same time since the premiere of Blackfish at Sundance in January of 2013. So, you know, if we all know that John Crow recently passed away. When this was edited, it was at the beginning of March for a presentation I had to do in the UK. I would have, of course, included something with John Crow to pay him the respect that he is due. He gave such a powerful interview and testimony in his film. And I just think, even though it's sad that, of course, that we've lost him, I think it's quite poetic that he was able to give such a powerful testimony before he passed away. And the latest numbers that I've received from CNN, Magnolia Pictures, the publicists involved, and this was even a couple months ago, more than 150 million people have now seen Blackfish around the world. I think that's just so fantastic that John Crow was able to deliver that, because here you have this guy that's this rough exterior, and he's just, you know, plagued with this guilt of what he had done. He says it in the film, it was the worst thing that he had ever done. But at the same time, he got the redemption because he understood the mistakes and he regretted it, and he you could see the empathy, you could see the compassion in him, even though he was this rough exterior guy, which really, I think, made it even more powerful to see. So what I want to do tonight, I'm gonna, I've done my book tour, the bulk of my book tour, and then I have a few stragglers left, but I'm gonna throw that out the window. I'm gonna totally wing it, because one, I'm bored doing it the way I've been doing it. And my publisher always wanted me to read at least one section of the book. Well, they didn't pay for this trip, so guess what? I'm going to do what I want. You want me to do what you want, and you have to pay for it. So anyway, but also mainly because so much new stuff has happened that I wanted to just speak about that. For example, not yesterday, the day before, was the first time ever in my entire life I've seen killer whales in the wild. And what was important for me was that I needed to feel safe. And so I went on a boat with Jeff Friedman and everybody, all the other former trainers in Blackfish. And, you know, we, of course, have bonded over the making of Blackfish, and everywhere we've gone for promotion and done all that. And I knew I was in a safe environment. And for my first time to see it, because I didn't know how I would respond. You know, I didn't know if I would get emotional. I didn't know how I would feel, and unless you're in a safe environment, people can place an expectation on the way they think or want you to respond. And I knew with this group of people, I would not have that expectation placed on me. That however I responded would be okay, and I needed it. So I'm still processing it. You know, it's still swirling around in my mind because it was just so crazy good to see it. And, you know, I did not get emotional. I didn't cry. There's nothing wrong with crying. Trust me, I cry over animals, not so much about people, but I cry over animals all the time. And, you know, but, it's still possible for me to get emotional, because what comes to mind is when I left Seaworld for the final time in August of 2012, resigned, and that was it. I chose to speak out. For 3 weeks, I was completely unemotional. But after 3 weeks, just out of the blue, I mean, nothing had prompted it, but it just hit me that I was really losing all of these whales that I loved, especially Takara, and forever. And it came over me. I bawled like a baby. So I'm certainly capable of that. So this might hit me in the same way or similar way in a couple of weeks. I don't know. Right now, I just looked out there in amazement at how beautiful it was and how incredible it was. It was like a kid in a candy store. And, of course, I had my reflective moments of that, how sad we are. We're going to win. We are winning this fight of ending this industry. Not because of just us, but all of us in this room with our diverse expertise. We're all making it happen. And it just, it made me just sad to think of the whales that I love, that I spent my life with, that gave me everything. They're never going to benefit from that. They're never going to, even with this winning this fight and ending captivity, they're not going to get it. So it's for the future generations that we're not going to have those captive whales. We're going to stop the breeding program. Let this be the last generation of killer whales. The excellent example that Ingrid showed you, that not only is it viable, it's impressive. It's just amazing to look at what she came up with for sea pens, sea sanctuaries, whatever you want to call them. And I don't know, maybe Takara, Tuar, Kasaka, maybe those whales could end up in a place like that. Certainly, that would make me very happy. But so I was reflective about that. Of course, that made me sad. And the other thing that dominated my thoughts was, how can anyone, after coming and seeing this, and seeing the beauty of it, and seeing these animals in their natural habitat, go back and justify in any way, shape, or form, on any level, that those animals should be in those concrete tanks for entertainment and profit? I just thought, anyone who thinks like that is a completely morally bankrupt person. You're just completely detached from any type of empathy about anything other than themselves. It's impossible to see that in a while. We went out again this morning and to see that and then look at the images that Ingrid showed you with Morgan, and it's just sick. It's just sick what's happened to these animals. And we're going to get out of it. So what I want to tell you is just, how did I go from being a complete, total SeaWorld loyalist to speaking out? And I think a lot of us that were in Blackfish, even though we were from different parks and different times, I know for sure we had parallel experiences. We saw the same things, we experienced the same type of culture. And I don't really want to speak for those other guys on this, but I feel that this is accurate, that when we went into it with an open heart and for the right reasons. We loved animals, and we wanted this magical life of living with killer whales. And we did not, at that time, we did not have the knowledge, we did not have the education to believe anything other than what SeaWorld was saying to everyone, which was that these animals live fantastic lives, and they're healthy, and they're thriving. They love to use that word. And it just takes a while of being in your career, because at first you don't know what's normal from abnormal, or healthy from unhealthy, and you're just so stoked that your childhood dream, for me, that I had wanted since I was 6 years old, has now finally come true. And so you still have these incredible blinders on because the animals are so impressive. So it takes a while, years, before you start to see, wait a second, that's not in the best interest of those animals. Oh, wait a second, that's not normal, that's abnormal, that's not healthy, that's unhealthy. In the beginning when you don't know anything, you're like, oh, well maybe all of the whales in the wild have, fully collapsed dorsal fins, or maybe they all have the teeth destruction like that. And of course you realize later that's not the case. So, but then once you get to that point, you're stuck. Because now you have these incredible relationships. You love these animals so much. It's also your identity. It's been your identity since you were a child. Now it's your identity as an adult. It's not like you're working for IBM and you say, you know what, I don't like my boss anymore and I'm out of here. And you go and you get a same type position in another company. Where else are you going to go to work with killer whales? And certainly Seaworld, known for swimming with killer whales and doing the most spectacular stunts in the water with the whales. So you have this conflict that that all is not right, but you don't want to abandon these animals that you love. And I certainly spoke out a lot, even when I was a lower level ranked trainer. I would get in trouble all the time because I would speak higher ranked people and say, that this is BS, you should not be doing this to these animals, and certainly once I got to a high enough rank, I was very vocal about, we cannot do this to her, we cannot take another calf from her, we cannot, treat her like a baby machine, we cannot, we can't keep putting these whales in an 8-foot deep med pool, for hours at a time. And you realize that you really don't have any power. Despite what your rank is or how many years of experience, at the end of the day, corporate Seaworld is still going to take that calf away from the mother. They're still going to treat them like the baby machines because they want to pop those babies out as fast as they can. And you're just powerless to do anything over it. And it's a really sick and disgusting example I can give to you is, it's been such an education experience for me too since I left SeaWorld, because I was so captivity bubble. That's all I knew. I knew everything about captive orcas, had risen to the highest ranks in that, but I knew nothing about killer whales in the wild. I'm still learning. That's why I'm so fascinated by all of these talks that everyone's giving, because it's just a wealth of new information to me, because it's a total opposite world that I was raised in and came up through. But so when in the wild they won't breed until roughly 13 to 15 years of age. Okay, well in 2013, I've got two bad examples to give you, but in 2013 they forcibly artificially inseminated Kalia at SeaWorld, California. She was only 8 years old. So at 8 years old, she's a kid. Her body is years away from being fully developed. So here now they are forcing, and we've had whales die giving birth, and that were adults. And here they're taking a kid, and now they're forcing an 18-month gestation on her because they want another calf. That's how sick and twisted that is. In the human world, that's the equivalent of child trafficking. So then also the other example with Takara is, they, in the wild, it's usually a calf every 3 to 5 years. Well, in captivity, the whales are trained to give us voluntary urine samples and blood samples. So we're testing the urine every day for progesterone, luteinizing hormone, and what's the third one? Progesterone, luteinizing hormone. I forgot the hard ones. I forget the third one. Jeff, Carol, somebody help me out here. What's that third one we were testing the urine? Estrogen. Thank you. See, that's the easiest. I always forget the luteinizing hormone. So but with Takara, so we monitored her, they won't cycle for about, it's almost like clockwork, a year and a half after they give birth. They will not cycle. So we monitored Takara's blood and urine, and on the dime, at a year and a half after she gave birth to Sakari, she cycled, and we artificially inseminated her on that very first cycle. So her body is still healing from an 18 months gestation, giving birth, nursing Sakari, doing all this, and the very first possible time that biologically we could artificially inseminate her, we did it. And we used Chimay sperm from Argentina. We know, probably everyone in this room knows that, these are whales. Takara is Icelandic. These whales would never meet in the wild, let alone breed. We used Chimay in Argentina. We used his sperm for both Kasaka and Takara. Kasaka is Takara's mother. So now Seaworld, much like Jurassic World, are creating hybrid animals that do not exist in the natural world. And it's just sick. Now it's transferred to, now we're going to force this process of AI, artificial insemination, on the equivalent of a kid. And, because each one of those whales is valued at roughly $15 to $20 million. So the more whales they have, the more money they have. And, they're not breeding fast enough naturally to sustain the population. That's why artificial insemination became so important, and we did the very first successful one in the world in the year 2000. I was on Kasaka's team and performed it that day, and just to show you the shift in my perspective, at that time in 2000, I thought it was fantastic. I thought we were pioneers. We were doing something for the first time ever in the world, and I just remember afterwards, of course we had to train it. After we trained it, we got her ready, and after the procedure, just not only myself but other trainers just praising Kasaka and being excited and just being like, "Good girl, you did so awesome, you made history," and just truly feeling like you were doing something good. So fast forward to 2011. I'd done artificial inseminations in between that, but the last one I did was on Takara in 2011, and I was on Takara for that one, and the contrast is on that one, as I had her rolled over and I'm holding her pec and keeping her still, I'm telling her just over and over again, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I tried to stop this, but I couldn't." And it's just a journey. It's a process that you go through, and I was 100% SeaWorld loyalist for a long time, but when you start to see all these horrific things happening to these animals, and the deception to the public, the deception then to the trainers, it becomes one of those things you just can't rationalize away anymore. So, for example, when Alexis Martinez was killed, we were told, first of all, when Alexis was killed, we were personally, me included, were back in the water after only 2 days after he was killed. At 2 days, we did not have any information yet on what had happened to him. All we knew is that it happened in a training session, that it happened on Christmas Eve, because of course we got called into work to say, "Keto just killed Alexis." But 2 days, they kept us out of the water. We kept it hidden from the media on purpose, because it wasn't in a show, and no media had access to it. And two, people didn't really connect the dots that all of those whales in Spain are SeaWorld-owned whales. So they owned them then, they still own them now, and as Ingrid brought up, now they list Morgan as a quote-unquote asset, which is exactly like Jurassic World also. We call them, the assets instead of, that's how they filed it with the Securities Exchange Commission. So we were back in the water. We didn't know anything that had happened to him, and then
Trying to do this so nobody sees it. You're not supposed to.
I'm afraid she's coming close because I'm still so, it's embedded in my brain from living in a cult, because that's my opinion, is that this is a full-blown cult. And the words and the phrases that we were trained to say and not to say. So you'll catch me even in this, where I'll switch back and forth from pool to tank to behaviors to tricks, because it's just so embedded in me. So I finally made of course everybody, my friends and Ingrid, everybody, they correct me every time, but it still comes out. And so now I've given her permission to use physical violence against me every time that I say something like that. Maybe that will work. Electric shock therapy. We gotta try something else, because I've been gone for right at 3 years. Next month we'll make 3 years, and I still, you'll hear me say rules and behaviors, because we were told that the key, and we were trained that not like this was an option for you. We were trained as this is a directive, and you will speak this way, and if you don't, you'll get written up, you'll get moved out of Shamu Stadium, you may be fired, demoted, whatever. But the key ones for us are that we don't say tank, we say pool, because pool makes people think, like, oh, a swimming pool, and we're happy when a person's in a swimming pool. So pool versus tank. The other one was never to say captivity. We were to say in the care of man, which is, that's why I named one of my chapters in my book that way. But, also never to say natural habitat, to always say the wild. Because natural habitat, that's a no-brainer. Natural habitat, that's where they should be. So that immediately tips people off that, oh, well then they shouldn't be here. So if you tell them the wild, that makes it sound like a scary place, like bad things can happen to you in the wild. So, and this is, what's so sick about it is this is a premeditated manipulation and deceit to the public. Because we're told this is the reason why we use these phrases instead of the others. So we're going out there and using these so we can manipulate the public. And then also flat out lie to the public. One of the top questions we would get all the time would be, is there chlorine in the water? And we would say, no, we don't use chlorine in the water. We use a process called ozone. Well, I'll tell you about ozone in a minute, but ozone is a horrific thing. But people don't know that. They don't know what ozone is. And all they're looking for is, do you have chlorine? So if you say, no, we treat the water by ozone, that satisfies them and they walk away. So, but the truth of the matter is that of course we use chlorine in the pool. We have injectors, chlorine injectors.
In the tank.
See, thank you. See, I'm telling you, it's bad. Thank you, Ingrid. You can strike me later. So we have chlorine injectors into the tank that distribute chlorine that is greater than 5 times the power of household bleach. This chlorine is so strong that us trainers, when we're doing underwater foot pushes on the whales, we would sometimes get serious eye burns. So we would come out of the water, and even with the eye flush station, we still could not open our eyes because they burned so bad. So we were sent off-site for medical treatment. We would come back with the patches over our eyes for sometimes 2 to 3 days and told if you remove these patches earlier, you risk blindness. And our animal training management and our water quality management would explain to us that this is happening because the whales have foot pushed you through a pocket of chlorine that we lie and tell the public that we don't use, that was not yet properly dispersed. So, you know, there's all this deception. There's all this stuff that's hidden. It's definitely, to say they're not transparent is too forgiving. It's too that's, what's the word? It's underestimated for sure. I mean, this is flat out, consciously premeditated lying to the public. So when I was in France, when I left Seaworld of California and I went to Marineland in France, the chlorine injectors into the tanks malfunctioned, and where normally they would inject and they stop, and they inject and they stop. Well, overnight they didn't stop, so they just constantly injected chlorine into the pool tanks. Wow, it's so crazy that came. So when we came in the morning, all of us trainers, and myself and Lindsay, another former Seaworld trainer, she and I ran the facility, so we were the two top people calling all the shots. And the whales were so badly burned that they couldn't even open their eyes. So to feed them, we had to actually put the fish and touch the side of their mouth and the side of their head with the fish, and then they would open their mouth, never opening their eyes. It took them days before they would open their eyes, and all the skin on the back of their head and their back was like, you know how you have like something adhesive and you pull it apart? The skin was just peeling off of them like sheets and sheets of just huge, massive amounts of skin, because they had just been burned so badly by the chlorine. So people think, and what Seaworld wants people to believe, is that you can't reintroduce these whales into the wild, back into their natural habitat, because of all the pollution and all that. What people don't realize is that the water is treated with 3 very caustic chemicals: chlorine, ozone, and aluminum sulfate. Ozone, it attacks all living organisms. The good part of that is it attacks bacteria, but it doesn't stop there, it doesn't discriminate. It goes on and it attacks everything else that is living. So everything on the whales that's alive, which is everything, their tissue, their eyes, everything, it's attacking and destroying all of it. And then aluminum sulfate, under the right amounts, it has enough power to actually corrode metal. Is that corrosive? Is that acidic and corrosive? So they have chlorine, ozone, and aluminum sulfate. And so when people see them and they think, oh, these pools are clear, it looks like tanks, that's 2 hits. 2 or 3. It's getting too much now, I might not survive it. So it's, you know, it's easy for people to think. If you see clear water, you think pollution-free, bacteria-free, and that would be better for them than out in the wild where there's pollution. They don't understand that they're swimming around in these 3 caustic chemicals that are lethal. They're lethal. So, and not to mention that we, the trainers, were swimming in it too. I was never even told or explained all the damage that ozone and aluminum sulfate can do to you. All we knew about was that existed, but we were never explained that it was harmful. And then of course when our eyes would get burned and we had to wear patches for days on end or risk blindness, we knew the chlorine obviously was bad. So, you know, we knew that shouldn't happen. And I mean, who knows the long-term effects from that? Right now I can see, but maybe in 10 years, maybe I won't be able to see because I've had too many bad eye burns. We don't know. So Fabien in France, he was so badly burned, eye burn, he wasn't even swimming with the whales. He was doing a swim test because we're trying to get the French trainers to do a swim test because they never had to before. And he had to wear the patches over his eyes for 8 days. He was so badly scalded. And they told him, if you take them off less than 8 days, you'll go blind. So this is what the whales are swimming and living in 24/7 with no escape. So at the end of my career, one of my biggest fights was the med pool. That's only 8 feet deep.
Tank.
The med tank. Oh gosh, that one's a really hard one for me because I've never described it as anything other than. So the smallest tank in the facility, the medical tank, is only 8 feet deep. And it's smaller than a lot of people's backyard swimming pools. We would house these whales in that tank for hours at a time, many times over throughout the day, every single day. So I fought this issue because how messed up is it that you're having these adult whales, sometimes 3, 4, and we're putting them in a backyard swimming, the size of a backyard swimming pool, that's only 8 feet deep. So their flukes are dragging, like Ingrid showed a picture of Morgan. You saw that the tank clearly was not deep enough, and that water was deeper than 8 feet because she's clearly longer than 8 feet. So imagine spending hours at a time over and over and over again in only 8 feet. So we've had whales, especially Tillicum in Florida, his flukes, because he spends a lot of time in that medical tank, that he has all this damage to the sides of his tail flukes because they drag. And because that tank has the lifting floor in it, it does more damage than even the other pools that don't have it, that are painted blue, because it has these they're like slats, and you can cut yourself on them really easily. So and you know, he has all this massive scar tissue that's accumulated, open wounds that won't heal. They put honey on his tail flukes to try to use it as a lubricant and to try to protect him, but it never heals. So he just constantly lives with these open sores and wounds from being in pools that are not deep enough for him. And how they can justify this as, you know, world-class veterinary care and leaders of the world of killer whale habitats is just sick. It's clearly not the truth. So the end for me was when we really started to ramp up the artificial insemination, the forced artificial insemination, and treating them like baby machines.